Welcome to 8 Days of Meteor, Day 1. Getting started with a Meteor app. So, if you're following along, the very first thing that we're going to go over is we're going to pick up with understanding the app structure. I'm going to skip over the installing Meteor part. It's pretty easy. You can use the shell script to do it. The command's right there in the email. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. But if you do need to, you can go to meteor.js, click the install button right there, and this is the command. So it's pretty simple to get that thing going. If you're on Linux or Mac or something like that, and then the Windows, you can download the installer and get that going as well. So a lot of what this course is designed to teach you is to pay attention to the Meteor docs. And so you can go to docs.meteor.com. And, I think the question is like, how do you structure a Meteor app? And so there are some special answers to that. And if we switch over to the full API, we get all the docs over here. And you can see we've got one that says structuring your app. And so I wanted to go over this real quick. The client is a special folder. We've got client, we've got server, public, private, client compatibility, and tests are all the top level kind of special folders. And then we also have lib, which is treated differently as well. And so the gist is this. If you create a folder in the root of your application called client, any code that you do that with is only going to be shipped to the client. And you do the same thing with server. Any code you put in a server folder, only going to be shipped to the server and won't be shipped to the client environment at all. And it turns out that that's actually any directory named server or client that actually works with. So you can actually structure it completely differently and have, like a module folder or a features folder and have client and server code kind of living there as well in those folders, and it'll behave the same way. So, but at the top level, you have public, which is just going to be any files that you need, such as images and icons and robot.txt like they mentioned. And then you have private, which you can actually access using the assets API. We won't really get into that in this video or actually any of the 8 Days Meteor stuff. I think that's pretty advanced. But if you need to have files that are hidden and only accessed through code, then you would put it in the private folder. And then we've got this special client compatibility. As far as I know, this only exists at the top level client compatibility. They don't really say in the docs, and honestly, I haven't played with it too much. As I generally have a client folder in the top level of my application. And so this is just like if you're going to download a jQuery plugin or something like that, you can stick it in the client compatibility folder, and it basically makes sure that any variables that are declared with var at the top level, it's going to make sure that those are exported as globals, and they'll still be available on window essentially. So the behavior is exactly as you would expect it to be. And then tests, and actually for the purposes of this course, and for the purposes of the docs, tests are just ignored. They don't load that code anywhere. You'll have to install something like Velocity and a testing framework in order to get those tests picked up and run. And then I mentioned lib as well. Lib is a very, very special one. It is one that gets loaded first in any place that it exists. That file is going to be picked up and loaded before anything else. And so if you have a client lib folder, then anything that goes in there is going to be loaded before the rest of all the client code. And so for me, I tend to put I'll have a lib router file or something like that. And so that way you ensure that your router is always there before everything else if need be. But it's a way for you to be able to control the load order if you need to. And then there's some other interesting things. They go into the file load order. I honestly, after 2 years of messing with Meteor, I haven't had to get into the file load order too much. But essentially, it will load the deepest files first, so you can keep making directories if you want. And then I think it's all alphabetized as well, so you can put like a 0 in front of it because numbers come before letters. And yeah, it can get crazy if you need it to. All right, so that kind of covers the first part of the lesson. And so now the goal is for us we'll create the application, and goal number 1 is for us to create a client and server folder and move the default code that came with, our default created app into the client. So let's do that real quick. And so we'll just type meteor create party planner, because everybody likes to have a party. And you can see it did some stuff, and now we can cd into party planner, and we're running version 1102. And so I'm going to go ahead and start this up too. I just think this is interesting. Oops, we got to get this guy into the meteor run. Got something already running here. There we go. So this guy had a meteor run. And what's happening here is we're building the files. We're starting Mongo. The application is firing up with Node, and it's being hosted on localhost 3000. And so now when we go there, we should see the example app that you get, which is just a click me button that counts up. I don't even think it's shared or reactive or anything like that. But so yeah, kind of boring. But what we want to do now is let's make some directories. Oops, make dir server, make dir client, and we're gonna want to move all these party planner files into the client folder because they have nothing to do with the server, so they don't really need to be sent to the server. Yeah, and so we've kind of accomplished goal 1 there. And let's take a look now at the next part of the lesson. So the reason we type meteor create is because we need our meteor folder. And so if we go into the .meteor folder, it's hidden by default. You can see there's a local folder. Let's do this. Yeah, we get a local folder, we get packages, platforms, release, and versions. And so the folder is where our builds happen, and then the other 4 files are text files, but they do interesting things for us. So the package file keeps track of the packages that we want installed, and so we'll get into Atmosphere in a later lesson. But suffice it to say, this is where that data is kind of stored. And then hand in hand with that is actually the versions file. This is like a gemfile.lock or something along those lines if you've come from a Ruby background. This tracks all the versions of the plugins or the packages and the dependencies that you've installed. And so you can see, even though we only had 3 packages listed, we've got all these dependencies in here that have been installed. And a lot of this is coming from the Meteor platform package up here. So you get a lot of stuff there. And then let's see, what else do we get in? We get the platforms. We won't get too much into, but if you're going to do something like Cordova, this is where the iOS platform and the Android platform would show up in here. And then the release is pretty simple. It just tells you what release of Meteor you're running. And I actually, I use that personally, so you can see I'm actually catting out the version from that file and sticking it into my bash prompt. So little fanciness there. All right, and so goal number 2 was for us to look at all that code that was created and then use meteor run to get it running and look at what the code does in the browser. Yeah, and so if you want to see something really, really interesting, if we go back into the meteor folder, we can type, I've installed the tree command, we can type that, and you can see actually what the entire structure looks like under the local build folder. we get modules, and this is all the npm stuff that's coming over. And we get all these, like this programs folder. There's a main.js. That's what runs the app. So there's a lot of stuff kind of going on under the covers. And then I guess another way to look at all those files, if we go here to inspect element on the page and go to the network tab, no, the sources tab, we can actually open up and see, if we open up the client folder, we can see these are all the files that we moved, right? So we've got the template, we've got a JavaScript file here, and then we've got the CSS. And then if we open this up, you can see here's all those packages that we noticed in the versions file. So really interesting to see how this stuff's being stitched together. I think it's important. You should know where to go look when you're debugging this stuff. So that's why we start here. All right, so that's goal number 2. So let's go on to goal number 3. So what we want to do, we're going to add our first package. Like I said, we were going to get into Atmosphere. So let's do that real quick. So the goal here is I want something that looks at least somewhat decent. I'm not a designer, but let's start with Bootstrap. So we go here to atmosphere.js.com, type in Bootstrap, and you can see things are being sorted on the page based on a number of different things. We've got number of downloads. That seems to be the primary driver. And then we've got these stars. Those seem to make somewhat of a difference. And so we're kind of sorting these based on popularity. And I know for a fact that this TWBS:bootstrap is the package that we want. It's actually being wrapped up and ported over straight from the Bootstrap guys. So I think that's going to be the best bet for us, because it's going to be anytime Bootstrap releases something new, it's going to automatically pop in here and update in the ISO build package server that Meteor runs, which conversely updates Atmosphere. So what we want to do now is we'll just type Meteor add. Whoops, I guess I copied all that. Meteor add TWBS:bootstrap. And that's going to go out and get some information from the server, and then it's going to download it to our hard drive, and then it's going to symlink it in. And so if we come back over here to the running application, you can see our design has changed a little bit. And then if we go back and look at the packages, we should somewhere in here get TWBS bootstrap right there. So there's the bootstrap JS file, and I'm assuming our CSS, where did it go? Down here. It's being concatenated together, and you can see here's all the bootstrap CSS going into our main CSS file. So the processor is working and everything looks good. And if you wanted to, you could download those files directly. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of upside to that, other than you get to manage it yourself. So if you want like an older version, I guess maybe that's a good thing. But what I would suggest is create that client compatibility folder, download Bootstrap, and put the files in there. Yeah, so that's goal 3. So that kind of rounds out the lesson, but I also give extra credit every day. And so goal number 4, the extra credit, is to remove the HTML in the body tag of Party Picker HTML and add in the Bootstrap navbar to work with in the next lesson. And so let's maybe do that real quick. All right. So I'm going to open Vim here. That's what I use. Client, Party Planner. Guess there's a typo in that, huh? Party Planner HTML. And so we don't need this code in the body tag anymore. And we're gonna start putting in our own code. All right. So I'm gonna get rid of this guy. I'm gonna get rid of the hello template. We don't need it either. And so then we can start doing things like the header. And then we'll do a nav with a class of navbar and navbar default. We'll give it a role of, oops, there we go. Role equals navigation. We'll close that nav. All right, and so then, again, we're just using a lot of the Bootstrap kind of classes to get the look and feel that we want. So we'll go with container fluid here. Close that div. And then we'll want a button right here. Button type equals button. And data toggle. So basically we're just making this guy responsive right here. I don't know if this is super interesting or not, but we'll finish it out. So I'll just put some spans in here. Oops. Let's get these guys lined up. There we go. And what we're going to want is a little icon, maybe. And it'll be a link. It'll take you back to the home page. So we'll just have an href of slash. And then we're going to install Font Awesome here in a second. So you get to see Atmosphere and work again. And we'll just use a glass, right? So it's like a little martini glass or wine glass going on. Yeah, I think that's about it for now. So let's see what that guy looks like. Yeah, so we're getting the nav bar going on. And when you shrink it, you get the little hamburger menu over here. That was the button stuff I put in. And then, so we're missing the wine glass or the little martini glass that I had mentioned. So we need to do meteor add, and then we'll want to grab the package. So I just happen to know it's Fort Awesome : font awesome. So we'll install that guy, but you can find that through Atmosphere again, or you can actually do a meteor search font awesome, and that would pull back information as well. And I think it's sorted similarly maybe to Atmosphere. I don't know. All right, and so now if we go back, you can see, boom, it loaded. So we're good to go. So that kind of completes day one of the 8 days of Meteor. I think if you haven't yet, I would take a look at the kind of the directory structure and the .meteor examples from the open source examples section that I outlined. I think that's important to go look at other people's code and understand like how they're doing things and learn to read code, because I think that's super, super important skill to have as a developer. So take the time to do that and be ready for the next video tomorrow.